From the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. And today I'm very pleased to have with me Michael Lenox, who's just joining me live from the USA. Michael is a professor at the University of Virginia's Darden School of Business. Michael, I prefer all the time that my guests introduce themselves, so I will give that to you.
Well, thank you, Mohammed, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be on here. As you said, I'm a professor at the University of Virginia's Darden School of Business, and have a new book that is out called Strategy in the Digital Age, Mastering Digital Transformation. And in large part, this is based on my research and teaching over the past, actually, a few decades. But I've been teaching an elective of the same name over the last 5-6 years, and decided to turn it into a book. And so the idea is to be hopefully a helpful reference for business leaders who are pursuing digital transformation.
Yeah, that's great, Michael. Actually, the topic, as we were discussing before we start recording, it's a topic which close to my heart because I worked as a consultant as well. Now, the question I want to ask you, why you felt that you need to write a book about strategy in digital age, and what you felt the information was needed now?
Yeah, I think the major kind of point, if you will, of the book is right in the title. And what I have observed is when it comes to digital transformation, there's a lot of efforts around what I would call kind of building out your digital infrastructure. Maybe using cloud computing, maybe setting up a data lake, getting your data in order, and all of those things are critically important as you pursue a digital transformation. But it's absolutely critical that you understand that a lot of these digital technologies are in many cases fundamentally transforming the way the competitive environment is playing out in different industry segments. It's changing the way that you create value for your customers, changing the nature of the way you engage your customers. It's creating opportunities for what we call a deconstructing the value chain, where new digital natives are coming in and picking off maybe various pieces of what you've done historically. Think about what's happening in financial services with the fintech movement, if you will. You're seeing, the rise of things like platforms that are really can be transformational in many different industries. So the main point of the book is to kind of take that step back and think more broadly about how are these kind of suite of digital technologies impacting competition, and then providing a set of frameworks and guidance to think about how you might position your company in these evolving competitive markets.
Yeah, that's great. And who you can tell us are the target audience for the book, Michael?
Yeah, as a business strategist, there's a tendency sometimes to think of strategy as only the suite of the domain of the C-suite. I think that's clearly a target for this book, but I'd like to think everyone should be at least a strategic thinker in their organizations. So my hope is this book is useful not only again to CTOs and CEOs, but many within an organization who might find themselves either engaging in a digital transformation or simply engaging in some of the strategy work of the organization.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, as you said, anyone can be, an audience for anything related to digital transformation. I agree with you on that. Now, when we think digital transformation, right? So always we read about that we need to have concepts and frameworks. So what are some of the key concepts and frameworks that you have covered in the book?
Yeah, the book is structured actually that each chapter ends with a series of frameworks or worksheets to help you work through your thinking. Some of them are really just based on kind of classic strategy tools, environmental trends, what's happening in your competitive environment, who are not only your current set of competitors, but more importantly, who are potential competitors who might leverage digital to move into your segment. And then what are your core capabilities that you possess? I think one of the messages, this is just the first worksheet alone, but one of the core messages is understanding that in an evolving competitive environment, especially where the market opportunities may be shifting away from where they historically been, you need to both evolve your capabilities, but recognize that it would be very difficult to just forego everything that you've done in the past. So I like to say, I run into a lot of businesses that say things like, we want to be the Google of X. And my first reaction is often, well, Google's going to be the Google of X. They're actually far better positioned than you to achieve that position. So reflect a little more on kind of what do you uniquely bring to this evolving competitive environment, and then how might that best position you for success moving forward. So as you go through the book, we talk a lot about industry life cycles, understanding where we are in the evolution of different technologies, thinking about your company's part of the life cycle. Are you a mature business? Are you a declining business? Are you still a new growth enterprise? All of those should have an impact on ultimately where you're trying to position your company, your organization.
Yeah, that's great. Now, one thing you have repeated a couple of times now, Michael, you talked about competition. So how like digital transformation profoundly impacting the nature of competition? Can you explain that?
Yeah, and I think we've got so many historical examples here, but I'll go with one where I actually start the book, a classic one, which is the story of Kodak. Kodak, at some level, is the easiest digital transformation or digital disruption story to tell. They make film, the world goes to digital imaging, and they go bankrupt. But the fact is that Kodak actually was aware of digital imaging all the way back in the 1970s, had some of the first patents, spent millions and millions in R&D, had one of the first digital cameras on the market, and yet still wasn't able to make the transition. And I think one of the things that was a failure for them and was difficult for them is they couldn't get out of the idea that the way we consume images is to ultimately print them out. So we might use a digital camera to take images, but we're still going to print them all out at the end of the day. And that change in value proposition, especially with the rise of social media, just fundamentally changing the way we consume cameras and imaging, upset the whole industry, but clearly had this huge impact on Kodak. Take an example that I think we might see here in the future, maybe near future, autonomous vehicles. Questions of when we'll see full level 5 autonomy. But when we do, then it is very likely that we'll stop consuming automobiles in the way we currently do, which is like we go out and purchase our own car. It might very well move to a full ride sharing model where we consume car services. That, as you can imagine, is just a radical change in the way autos will be manufactured, distributed, consumed. That doesn't bode well for those established players unless they're able to evolve what they do.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I would say, just as a comment here, Michael, is I relate this to psychology a little bit and ego sometime at people, because although now we are in 2023, we still see people who are like stubborn on accepting the change and they don't see it coming. So I hope that this will be like an eye opener for business leaders to really embrace the transformation.
I
Now,
want to highlight on something you said there, because that's something I really discuss, especially in more the second part of the book, where I really talk about some of the management and leadership challenges. You use the word ego. And so one of the things that I emphasize, borrowing from my colleagues at Hess, is this idea that humility is the new smart. When you're in these rapidly evolving and changing worlds, it's really important to recognize that you don't know everything. And the technology is evolving so quickly, it's actually hard to predict where it might end up. And so building into your organization, what we sometimes call like a learning mentality or a learning viewpoint, where you constantly have to be testing and testing your assumptions and maybe pivoting the organization. I think it could be it is critical now and will continue to be critical moving forward. I mean, think about generative AI. 12 months ago, it was out there and there was people who were interested, but with the release of ChatGPT 3.5, an explosion of interest. And that has both, kind of upside and downside implications, right? Because not only are there those scrambling to kind of catch up to now this new interesting technology, but dare I say, I think there's probably, the overhype, the overreaction happening as well, and not maybe fully understanding how long it's going to take, the ways in which this, technology is going to have impact. And again, going into these worlds with some humility and understanding you're going to have to learn is going to be just absolutely critical.
Yeah, 100%. And I always give the example of Microsoft, like between, when Steve Ballmer was there and then when Satya joined, and how they were able to transform the company. Now, you mentioned AI, and of course, like I believe there are like other technologies that are out there. So, what role do emerging technologies such AI, blockchain, and cybersecurity play in digital transformation? And how are these technologies, changing the way we do business as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, at the heart of it, and one of the things I talk about in the book is really data, right? We've entered into a world, others have said, data is the new oil, right? It is incredibly valuable. It allows us to do these higher level data and analytics that manifest themselves in a number of different ways. So AI is, of course, one important application of how we might use data to improve offerings. Generative AI is a particular class of that. Autonomy, in any number of different domains as another, kind of related set of technologies. You mentioned blockchain. We can talk more about crypto. I'm a crypto skeptic, but I'm actually positive on blockchain itself. I think it's an interesting underlying technology
We
that
are
will
on the same side.
yeah. Well, we'll find some application here. And who knows what's next coming down the pipeline. And I think there'll still continue to be interesting things. A year ago we were talking about the metaverse, though it seems like the interest in the metaverse has already started to die down, but we'll see. We'll see how that one evolves as well. I always like to point out that we've had this exponential growth in three core technologies. Processing power, so famous Moore's law, doubling of processing power roughly every 18 months or so. Bandwidth, and then storage capacity. So think of cloud storage and the like. Each of those have had this incredible exponential growth over many decades at this point. And if we continue those trends, even for another, let's say 5 or 10 years, the world will be radically different than it is today, and in ways that are hard for us to predict. I think that's why there's so much hand wringing right now with AI. We've seen how much it's improved, even from ChatGPT 3.5 to 4, and it's going to be improving by leaps and bounds likely. And so it's hard for us to really fully grasp. And again, I'm not claiming to be a futurist that can tell you where technology is going to be. What I'm trying to emphasize is you have to build in that nimbleness as an organization to deal with this fast evolving set of technologies.
That's a great point, actually, Michael. How, do you think like smaller businesses will have better agility in adopting these technologies more than the enterprise?
Yeah, I talk quite a bit in the book about this classic battle, if you will, between the entrepreneur and the established, incumbent companies. And history is littered with, even very successful incumbent companies who fail in the face of disruption. So that's a common finding and observation. And often it is the new entrepreneurial companies that kind of arise in their wake as new technologies evolve. But one of the reasons I think it's true that we see this pattern is the advantage of entrepreneurs are not only that they're more nimble, but there's just more numbers of them, right? So we remember the successes, we remember the Facebooks, but we tend to forget the MySpaces and literally hundreds of other companies that were trying to make a go of it in social media. So in some ways, the power of entrepreneurs is just simply numbers. And we know the vast majority of them are going to fail, but all it takes is one of them to kind of hit on that special value proposition that resonates with the market to grow and succeed there. And so, at the end of the day, I think of markets as kind of a system, and you have this co-evolution of the established firms and the entrepreneurial firms. There's markets for acquisition as ways to kind of bring in some of that entrepreneurial interest. Sometimes they grow and take over, the old incumbents as well. And so it is an interesting kind of evolution of the competitive environment in a lot of these markets when new technologies come.
Yeah. Now, like because I had the chance, and thank you for sharing with me, the preview of the book. Now, Can you walk us with different digital business models that you mentioned in the book? Because I think this is something interesting.
Yeah, I think what we've seen is that digital is allowing for a proliferation of different business models. So probably the one that's probably first and foremost in a lot of people's minds would be the advertising models used by the likes of Google and Facebook, or Alphabet and Meta these days. Advertising isn't a new business model that's been around for centuries, but this ability to leverage data and analytics to create customized advertising to the individual user is proven very powerful and created these again alternative ways of delivering and capturing value. So you think about Google gives most of their products away for free. Things like Gmail, things like Android is open system. What they're doing is monetizing the selling of advertising. The joke is we actually aren't customers of Google, we're the product of Google. It's the advertisers who are the customers. You see platform plays where what the platform is doing is taking just a little bit of every transaction that occurs on it. This is everything from your Ubers and Airbnbs, which are what we call two-sided market makers. But think about what Apple does with their App Store or what Amazon does with Amazon Marketplace. All of those are about creating these platforms for exchange and then taking a little bit of each transaction that takes place there. The old classic, selling a product or service model, they still exist. But things like software as a service, advertising models, again, platform models, they're all proliferating this digital age. And again, can be quite disruptive to the old way of doing business. I'll go back again to autonomous vehicles. Probably if we move that direction, maybe it will be, paying a fee for an individual ride, or maybe there'll be subscription models where I sign on to a service and I get a certain number of, rides I can take per week. Again, very different than putting down a lot of money to buy an automobile that we, currently do.
Yeah, it's like very interesting, I would say. Now, it's a deep topic, and I know it might need hours to explain, but on a high level, how can organizations using your book, right, insights and strategies, plan and execute a successful digital transformation? Because
Yeah.
like it's a big topic, I know, but on a very high level.
Well, high level, I would highlight something I call the digital transformation stack. And so I suggest there's kind of 4 levels to that stack. The base level is your digital infrastructure again. Again, how do you organize, collect, and exchange data, cloud services, data lakes, and the like. The next level is what I would call data and analytics. What are the skills and tools that you can layer on top of this data collection effort? This is everything from AI, but even basic things like creating dashboards and the like to help decision makers. Beyond that, we have what I would call digital applications. So this is where things get real. This is where you create various offerings that maybe are external, ways in which you engage your customers, or they can be even internal, maybe how you organize HR in your organization, looking for efficiencies and the like. But the top layer of the stack, maybe not surprisingly, that I think is the most important is what I would call your digital strategy. So my standard line about this is if you think about digital transformation just from that bottom of the stack, it could be like trying to create efficiencies in the engines in the Titanic. You might be able to improve them, but you're simply still going to hit the iceberg. Maybe you'll hit it a little quicker than you did, in the first case. So strategy becomes absolutely critical because you need to understand where you're steering the ship, and that should guide your digital transformation efforts. I've seen way too many companies who have spent literally millions and millions of dollars developing digital applications that were meaningless, were not useful at the end of the day. Understanding just because we have the technology or we can create that dashboard or even use that, generative AI isn't necessarily going to be helpful if you don't know where you're trying to go as a company and where you're trying to position yourself. I think one of the misnomers about strategies that I try to dissuade people of is I think there's a philosophy or thinking that strategy is kind of set in stone. You decide, where that path is and it should never be changed. I really believe strategy needs to be dynamic. It is something you're constantly revisiting. You're looking at your assumptions, you're testing your assumptions, and when need be, you're pivoting. But having that viewpoint of where you're trying to go absolutely critical. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of time developing things that, again, might prove useless.
Yeah, just as a comment from my side in previous lives, as I was saying to you, Michael, as a consultant, I ask customers, okay, what is your current let's say priority? Yeah, we are on a journey of digital transformation. Okay, what you did? We adopted cloud, we
Right.
implemented this and that. And then I'm saying, yeah, so what? Like, because I think what people miss here, and I hope you agree with me, Michael, and I like this approach, is two famous sentence maybe, and that what might be like a very cliche, have end in mind, and the second one, have a why, right? Like in
Yeah.
everything. So why actually you want to adopt the cloud? Is it to have a better customer reach? Is it like to spin services faster than the competition, which you touched on before? But people like they just get it for the sake. And here, excuse me, all vendors, like I'm a vendor agnostic guy now. I used to work with some vendors. You need also to tailor your marketing on customer needs based. Like, yeah, like if you adopt the cloud, you are now on a digital transformation journey. And just for the sake of example, I've seen here in the Middle East, in the area where I am living now, millions of dollars spent on what so-called digital transformation, and it failed so badly. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
100% agree.
something.
100% agree. I mean, this is the CTO show, but I will say that what I've observed is when digital transformation is exclusively the domain of the CTO in the technology office, you're probably in trouble, right? You need that top leadership, the CEO level buy-in to why you're doing this and to what ends. And unfortunately, I think this happens in technology all the time is it's a new fun widget, right? It's a new fun piece of technology, and then we go exploring how we might apply it instead of maybe working the other way around, of kind of thinking what are these broader implications, and then how do we leverage it? Dare I say, generative AI? I think we're seeing this all over the place right now, where CEOs are being pressured on earnings calls and the like to be responsive. A lot of that is not very thoughtful at this point. People just kind of, oh yes, of course, we're pursuing generative AI and we're considering how, but like but really, what are you doing? Like, how is this actually going to impact your business? How is this going to create new growth opportunities for you? Like, those are the important questions to be asking, not just running out and immediately, adopting and spending on technology.
Yeah, right. And the reason I call it CTO show, because I want it to be a bridge between tech and business. So
Yeah.
that's it. Now, Michael, what challenges do organizations typically face when undergoing a digital transformation? And usually how these challenges can be addressed successfully?
Yeah, one of the things I advocate for are what are called digital champions. And what I mean by that are actually not the technology or the data scientist side. Like, they're really critical. I have seen organizations where you have C-suite buy-in, they have a strategy, a vision for where they're trying to go. You have a very capable and empowered technology office, technology staff. And where things fail is in, let's say, the business unit and business unit level, right? In the operating units of the organization. Um, Digital transformation can be onerous, right? It can be sometimes viewed as, wait a minute, are you trying to automate me out of a job? Right? Why are we adopting these technologies? I talk in the book about, from my own personal experience leading our digital transformation here at Darden, data can be power, and people are unwilling to give that power up by sharing their data with the enterprise. You have problems where people create, wonderful decision aids, maybe a dashboard or maybe some more sophisticated, let's say, IA prediction. And while it's created, it's not actually used, right? Like, people aren't actually using the technology to make decisions within the organization. So one way to overcome that is to foster and encourage these digital champions who are understanding of the technology, but not necessarily technologists themselves. It more kind of, business unit experts. Maybe they're in HR, or maybe they're in finance, or maybe they're in marketing, or again, in the individual business units, who can be that bridge, who understand enough about the technology, but then can translate it back to their unit. And Again, no offense to the technologists on the line here. Sometimes we're speaking different languages, right? and the marketing person doesn't understand what you're talking about when you're talking about some of the opportunities here. And so having these people who can be translators and serve as those champions, I've found that to be really, really critical.
Yeah, this is why I always also mentioned on the show a couple of times. I advise anyone who works in tech, even when you are still early in your career, maybe you are still on the infrastructure, you are an admin guy, maybe you are a cybersecurity analyst, maybe you are, I don't know, an application developer. Always try to build with time the business acumen. So when you go and
Yes.
talk to people, I mean to maybe managers, even maybe at some stage C-suite, these guys they don't understand your slashes and code and all this. They need to hear something more business wise, meaningful. Yeah.
I,
Now
I think I can say this because I have 2 engineering degrees, so I'm a reformed engineer. But engineers want to solve problems, right? And so the problem sometimes is the engineers will find a $10 million solution to a $5 million opportunity, right? Like so, understanding you've got to make the business case for these, and again, translate just absolutely critical to being effective and transforming the organization.
yeah. Now, you while you were answering, the previous question, you touched base on collecting data and some frictions there. So here, like, what are some of the ethical and policy considerations that organizations need to take into account when doing the digital transformation? Because it's all about data and how we get data, we need to collect it, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that. I have a whole chapter in the book about the political and social implications of digital, and there it's fraught. It's a fraught world we live in. I don't have any great answers to like what should or should not be the right choice. What I do really emphasize is that values matter, and that as an organization, you need to be very intentional about the impact you are having on your various stakeholders and what you feel comfortable with and not comfortable with as a company. It's not easy. I look at Google and Microsoft in particular right now with generative AI. You can see it in their public statements how they are struggling. They know the power of this technology. They know that it has potentially some very negative implications, and yet they know they need to keep pushing the technology forward. And I think, the important thing again is to just be very clear about what your value system is. Google has that classic line that they do no evil, right? Now that's a little vague, hard to define what is evil or not evil. But I think
Yeah.
you need to be very understanding. And one of the worksheets, building off of what we call like a stakeholder analysis, it's just very simply, who are your various stakeholders? What do they care about? How is your actions impacting them? And then how do you think those are aligned with your values as an organization? And again, trying to be very explicit about this. So data privacy is a critical one. And look, there are very positive uses of personal data to customize products and services that create value for those customers. And then there's ones that maybe we feel a little less comfortable with. And how far do we want to push that? Again, I think business leaders need to be very intentional and understanding of those implications.
Yeah, 100%. Now, as we are coming to the end, I have like a couple of questions left, and then I have a special question.
Sure.
How can the book be a resource for executives, entrepreneurs, and other professionals seeking to navigate the digital landscape and stay ahead of the competition?
Yeah, again, this book is very much managerial in its focus. The worksheets, throughout the book are designed to be integrative, and so that they are a way to kind of walk you through how you might think about your future position, and then how you would execute against that while you're pursuing a digital transformation. And at the core of it, as we were talking about earlier, is this idea of creating a learning organization. How do you build in the capabilities to be nimble, to pursue and learn, experiment, and likely fail, but also continue to learn and move forward. So the book really is designed as a way to help you from beginning to end of a digital transformation. Though I should say, I say end. I do believe digital transformation is a journey and not a destination, and so the technologies will continue to evolve. You'll need to continue to adjust and evolve your capabilities and your strategy as they evolve.
Yeah, 100%, because technology is evolving all the time. So it's not like one task and we're done.
Yeah.
Now, for anyone, who would, they would buy the book and they will get the book. What do you think, the takeaways they will have from reading the book?
Well, I think I go back to where we started our conversation. First and foremost, it is this idea that in our digital age, these digital technologies are often fundamentally reshaping the basis of competition in industries. And understanding that at a sophisticated level is going to be the beginning of how you start to strategize around this. One of the things I talk about in the book, classic economics idea of network externalities. And in a digital age, especially with proliferation of platforms, we see these network externalities everywhere. So this is very simply the idea that the value of a greater service improves as others consume it. So you think about Facebook, the value of being the first person on Facebook is very low, but as others start to use that network, its value increases. This is true a lot of times with software, operating systems, and the like have this type of feature. That has really important implications for competition. In some cases, it leads to kind of winner take all markets, as we call it, where there, if not one player, at least one dominant player. And we see that, through online retail with Amazon, through search with Google, through social media, at least historically with Facebook, increasingly now TikTok. And so understanding those underlying economics and dynamics, absolutely critical for designing an effective strategy.
Yeah, that's great. Now, to my last question, which is now it's like a traditional question. Is there anything, Michael, you wished I asked you, and how would you answer it?
Oh, well, you hit upon a lot of the important pieces here. Again, strategy leading the digital transformation, policy and social impacts of digital being an explicit part of your digital strategy and really being quite intentional about that. And then again, integrating it all together as you move forward and having that learning mindset. And so I think those are kind of the big takeaways in the book. And again, it's really designed to help walk you through that process.
That's great. Michael, how people can find more about you and where they can get the book?
Yeah, the book is from Stanford University Press, but it's available in all your favorite online retailers, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and the like. And if you'd like to learn more about me, I suggest you go to my personal website, which is Michael Lenox, Lenox.com. And you can find out a little bit more about me and some of my work. I actually have my own podcast called Good
Great.
Disruption, where we tackle some of these technologies and talk whether we think it's a good disruption, a bad disruption, or in some cases, no disruption at all. And so you can check that out as well.
That's great. I will make sure that I will put this in the episode description. Well, Michael, thank you very much for your time today. I know that you're busy and back to back. Thank you for being on the show. And as usual, the way I end every episode, I say and I repeat, if you are watching us or you are listening to us, you have any questions or feedback about this episode, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can send me an email, LinkedIn, and Twitter, where I'm most active. If you are interested to be a guest like Michael today on the show, also please reach out. Don't be shy. I'm always looking for some people who can inspire us, have a story to tell us, or they have a book they want to share with us. We'll be more than happy to have you on the show. And as usual, also as well, I hope you are enjoying, and don't forget to subscribe. And we'll meet again in the next episode. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.